Okay, welcome to the SFF Erotica panel. I am Nobilis Reed, creator, editor, and host of the Nobilis Erotica podcast, the best erotic speculative fiction short story anthology podcast in the known universe. It's the best because it's the only one. Unfortunately, that also makes it the worst erotic speculative fiction short story anthology podcast in the known universe. Nobilis Erotica is a paying market. I am the editor. I pick the stories. In addition, I am the author of Monster Whisperer, published by Circlet Press. My pronouns are he, him. Tonight, I'll be moderating a panel on SFF Erotica with these three talented professionals. Stephanie Burke is a customer, anime enthusiast, and author of dozens of erotic titles. Hardly a month goes by without at least one release. This is a powerhouse, ladies and gentlemen. Stephanie, stay high and tell us your pronouns.
Hi, everybody. My pronouns are she and her, and you know, it or that or what sometimes, depending on what the reason. I'll accept it.
Margaret Riley is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Changeling Press, which has been publishing sci-fi, futuristic, dark and urban fantasy, paranormal, action, adventure, BDSM, and contemporary romance since 2004, with more than 3,000 titles available in ebook, paper, and very soon audio formats. Margaret, hi, turn on your camera and tell us your pronouns.
Here I am. My pronouns are she, her, and hey you.
And we have Jean Cooper. Jean is an editor for Changeling Press with previous experience editing for Lucid, Liquid Silver Books, and other publishers that don't exist anymore. Jean runs Shortwood Press, which publishes historical and genealogical books. Hi, Jean. Tell us your pronouns.
Hi. My pronouns are she and her.
All right. So everybody, welcome to Balticon 54, where the bar might not stock absolutely everything you might want, but the prices are a lot better. All right, so first question. This is what everybody wants to know who's a writer these days. What is selling in SF Erotica, in erotic romance? What is hot? What do our readers want to see most of these days?
Just about everything. Alien Contact does very well for us. All of the shifters, really. I don't think there's other than time travel, which has always been a hard sell.
I get a lot of people who request more of the fish out of water stories, the kidnapping. It doesn't even have to be an alien kidnapping. I get a lot of people like that. It's like a really weird forced step back into forced seduction they like that, and they do like the soulmates, that one perfect soulmate. I've gotten a lot of requests for those.
The forced seduction, particularly coupled with aliens.
Yeah,
I've noticed.
Yeah, and I mean, I've gotten people who've written me letters requesting certain things, and that kind of scares me. Some of the things that they want are some of the things that I refuse to do, but it's interesting that there seems to be a growing market for that.
And something that you and I were talking about earlier is anything that also involves diversity, be it race, religion, or disabilities, and particularly not straight. You know,
yeah.
Any other colors in the rainbow.
Yeah, and male. For some strange reason, it's like that is, well, I can't even say for some strange reason. Most writers of male are women, and we write it for other women. Now, I have a lot of sources that are gay men, and I will run them down just to make sure I have this scene right. And they're like, that's cute. But it's the women who are like starving and salivating for this stuff. And I say that because I starved and salivated for it too, because it was like, I mean, I can picture myself between two guys, and I'm quite happy there. I'm really, really happy there.
One of my friends, Abigail Hilton, who is usually a Balticon regular, recently came out with a male erotic romance called the Knight Necromancer, and it is blowing the doors off of everything else she's ever written as far as sales are concerned. Her triple romance, for some reason I suddenly forgot the name of it when there's three people.
The threesome?
Getting old, man, it sucks. Menage, yes, she had a menage romance that did pretty well, but her Incubus series was good, but not. And this is, Knight the Necromancer is just blowing the doors off of it. And her theory as to why she likes to write it and why women like to read it is because whenever a woman sees a woman in the book, there's always the question of just kind of gender coercion, and there's always a little bit of fear about what might happen, because women are just, you know, more victimized than men in the world, and there's just a little bit of fear there. But there's two dudes on the page, you know, that none of that is going to show up in the story. She says that's why she likes to write it, why her readers like to read it, and that seems.
I don't know if I buy that or not.
One of our watchers, Grace Montenegro, she just made a good point. She's like, sometimes you just want to see men in a vulnerable, sensitive position. And that's not something you find, because for some strange reason, I don't like to write alpha males. I like gamma males better. You know, they can be alpha, or, you know, they can sit back and be beta if they want to. But we were inundated with the so-called alpha male. And for me, he's just a big butthole. You don't know how to sit down, you don't know how to listen, you're sure that you're right even when you're wrong. That type of alpha male thing was very, very popular for a while, and I think that we've like gotten tired of it. I mean, because really, most women today, if a guy, woman, do this because I said so and I know I'm right, would turn right away. You mean you the right hand for the rest of your life? But I mean, there's a change there, and I think that in male, you have guys, at least one of them, and oftentimes if you have switches, both of them are in a position of vulnerability. And that's something that women can relate to.
I think there's as far as the MPreg goes too, most women who've had a baby say, yeah, your turn.
My first book was an MPreg.
I was thinking that I think the alpha male is coming back, because as I leaf through books on Kindle Unlimited, I have to admit that I'm a real sucker for Kindle Unlimited. I keep seeing all these alpha male books, and I will admit, yes, I read some of them, but
you don't have to be ashamed of it here. Nobody's going to get on your case for it.
Judgment.
Yeah. No judgment.
But I think that they're very popular, or there wouldn't be so many.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't see them selling in sci-fi as much. One of the things I've noticed about sci-fi fantasy is that it's much less alpha male in general. And, you know, it's not uncommon to have much stronger female characters when it is a male-female or a male-male, female, whatever the case is.
Another reader, Mark Roth, just brought up a good point too. He says all the new alpha male crap is like Vox turd or incels. And you know, a lot of incels do consider themselves alpha males. And that kind of put another spin and another twist on what people see, because that's what the media is pushing as an alpha male. You see on the news, it would be the violent, aggressive incels who can't find a woman, so they need to take it out on everybody else, or run her off like they've been doing, unfortunately, and killing women. So I think alpha might be getting the term might be getting a new spin on it, or a new definition, and it's not a very positive one.
Yeah, I sent in that definition to the Oxford English Dictionary because they continually get new definitions of words, and I didn't check lately, but they said they were going to add it. So maybe, this will be good.
I didn't know you could do that. How fascinating.
Yeah. Well,
fast language changes.
Yeah. I work in a library, so I know all these little, how to get around things. So that's what I did.
Librarians, man, don't get things done. So let's get down to some specifics. we've all been in this business for a while now. What kind of changes are you seeing happening? Are there any new subgenres that have kind of appeared in the past, I don't know, 5-10 years that have caught your eye, things that that didn't really exist before and are...
We used to have just bisexual. Now we've got bisexual, pansexual, and gender nonconforming. We've got Mafia Romance, which didn't used to be around, and that, if you buy it in and of itself, is not sci-fi fantasy, but it does spill over into sci-fi. Flash's latest that just came out is a tentacle monster. Tentacle monsters aren't all that new, but this one's an alien tentacle monster.
And his partner is transsexual. He is what considered a true hermaphrodite. He has both set of organs, even though he's sterile. So that was a lot of interesting research to get that down. But on that same vein, somebody else brought up, and I'm glad that they did, because I was about to bring this up too, the Omegaverse, the Alpha, Omega, Beta worlds. And I've written a few stories in that world, and they are really hot sellers. People, for some strange reason, I know why, like a pregnant man, and they like to see men go and rut in heat. I mean, I have no problems with it. Maybe I don't.
We certainly can't touch on Omegaverse without mentioning the lawsuit that's currently happening, where some author decided that she had created Omegaverse and is suing another author because they wrote an Omegaverse story. But
you know what fan fiction is, because it's been a fan fiction trope for at least 15 years.
Oh yeah. So hopefully they can bring in some existing works to show them that no, you didn't actually think of anything brand new here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because frankly, if someone can own a trope like Omegaverse, then things are going to be in really disrupted state. So.
The very first book of Flashes I ever read was an MPreg. And that was at EC in 2000?
99.
99? Okay, I wasn't sure.
99. Yeah. It was a pregnant man, because if I had to be pregnant, somebody else had to suffer that dignity. So that, I just released that. I just re-edited and released it on Amazon. And it is selling like hotcakes. Shocked me. And I was like, this is a really old story, guys. They don't care. They want more. So it's like, oh, okay. And I look at authors like Willow Patty. I love Willow. Oh my goodness. She started something, had me starting 3 Omega. You're probably going to be getting, another MPreg soon. Putting that out there now. But she got the juices flowing, and she was talking about some of the things that she was doing. I love it. Why? Because it's so different from the norm. That not can make a man suffer.
When I started to read science fiction fantasy like this, all of the shifters were wolves or they were cats of some nature.
Yeah.
Now we've got prehistoric wombats, dinosaurs. I think that Pegasus shifters are old hat now. There are some very strange things going on.
If it's an animal that you can assign a gender or sexuality to, people are going to write it. Says the woman who wrote a bat shifter.
Hey, I saw a cuttlefish shifter book a few years ago. So.
Really? I would have to
go back and Google it. But
I remember Flash had a bee with a roller shape.
I blame you guys for a lot of stuff that I do. We used to have chats, and when I wasn't at the chat, they would suggest things for me to do. So I would open up my mailbox, and that's how we got a skunk shifter. Yeah, we made it work. We made it work. Somebody suggested a narwhal, but I was like, you guys are pushing it, okay?
Just a little bit too horny there.
Well, do the ocean dwellers, when they change back into humans, do they have to be on land, or do they breathe water when they're human, or what?
Well, narwhals are mammals.
They're whales. Yeah.
So that's, you know, they're going to be, you know, but, you know, there are beaches, right? You know, just you know, swim up to the shallows and then shift there and you're fine.
Just watch out for that horn. Which one?
How about consent? Has the relationship to, you know, how writers are tackling consent changed lately?
Oh yeah. I've gotten to the point now when I write love scenes, not only do my characters ask for consent, they ask for eager consent. And sometimes they will say, one protagonist will say to the other, we're not doing this unless I have your consent. Why? Because this is the age of Me Too. And so many things that somebody can do can be misconstrued. I was reading a really interesting article one gentleman sent into GQ. It was an anonymous letter. And it was an apology to all the women that he had dated when he was, you know, a young adult, as he put it. He said there were some times when the woman said no, and he pleased and begged and pressured, and she said, fine, yeah. And then she didn't want anything else to do with him again after that. And he wondered why, because she said yes. And it was, as he got older, he realized maybe she said yes because she was afraid she would get raped if she kept saying no. So a lot of things in society have changed. A lot of women now and men have come forward and have had these horrific stories about how they felt pressured into doing things. So I just wanted to put it out there. I mean, as romance novels, as novelists, we've been in the forefront of a lot of stuff. Condom use of protection, prophylactics. So why not this too? I do remember, oh my goodness, Anne Rice with her Sleeping Beauty trilogy years ago. Mm-hmm. Somebody tried to duplicate that. And as a result, somebody lost a hand. Because no, you cannot suspend somebody very tightly from their wrist for 4 hours straight. Kills the blood flow. And you know, when that happens, flesh gets necrotic. So that person lost a hand. So right around then, which 50 Shades of Grey kind of set us back, but there's been disclaimers and there's been explanations as to what have been going on in our stories. So I don't want to be the person who put something in that maybe sounded like it was forced and it wasn't true consent, because I don't want anybody coming back saying, I read this in a book, and because it's in the book, it must be okay. Mm-hmm. So consent is a very big issue for me.
Yeah.
How about from a publisher and editor point of view? What are you seeing in manuscripts and things like that?
Well, I have to say that I'm seeing a lot of really good books, and they always mention, are you protected? Even the contemporary ones, which I think is really interesting. They're modeling behavior, basically.
I see a lot more of that in male than we used to too. Mm-hmm. Be assumed that, you know, the guy couldn't get pregnant, so we're fine. And I'm seeing a lot more safe sex. And if it isn't there, we may well ask the editor to have the author put it in, because mm-hmm. It's the line editor. The editors look for it. The line editors look for it. Again,
when I was writing Monster Whisperer,
some people.
my tentacle sex novel, I wanted to contrast the way humans had sex with each other compared to the way tentacle monsters had sex with humans. And when someone goes to a tentacle monster, this is a consentical story. You know, nobody's getting grabbed against their consent. But when you give your consent to a tentacle monster, you're giving it to whatever the tentacle monster wants to do. It's all or nothing. If you have any reservations, the monster isn't interested in you. Whereas when humans are having sex with each other, it's constant negotiation and communication, because it never is completely one, you know, it's not a binary condition between humans. And I wanted to create a contrast there. So I kind of created two different kinds of consent for that. And I don't think if it was the tentacle monster were human, I don't think it would come across as tremendously ethical, but because it's this, you know, at least to some extent unknowable, mysterious force, that it's a little more palatable to have that kind of a sex scene there. The tentacle monster becomes something of a symbol for kind of just unrestrained lust rather than a relationship between equals.
But where
Well, that makes sense.
vampires used to be.
I'm sorry, I
don't
missed
want to
that
have to give consent per organ.
But remember, there was one point when werewolves and vampires were all symbols for this unbridled lust and losing your virginity. I think we've gotten over that now, because what once were the bad boys and the enemies are now the guys that we want. So I guess you have to take it to the next level. And that also goes with good world building. I have one book, for life of me, I can't remember the name of this book, but when the scene,
you know, if you've written so few, how can you forget the title, right?
There's so many of them. But I remember that scene in Earth Girls Are Easy when the heroine was going to sleep with the alien after he shaved himself, and she grabbed a birth control pill, thought about it, and popped 3 more in her hand, and then popped off.
Yeah.
That's in my mind. So with world building with this particular alien, that was one question she brought up. I want to have sex with you. Will you melt a condom? Will you melt my insides? What's going on here? And he's like, no, we're compatible for sex. And she's like, ew, birth control? He says, well, that's a different thing. It's a ceremony that involves all of our families sitting together watching. It's like 2 weeks of sex. We have 6 attendants to actually help put organs where they need to be. He's like, you want to reproduce? And she's like, no, just straight sex is fun. That goes with the world building, and it's so much you can get away with alien cultures now. At one point, it was, you know, like, go back into the werewolf again. The werewolf would climb into your room and rip your clothes off, and we all know that Red Riding Hood was all about losing virginity. So that was your lust. We like that now. So aliens give us a new and broader outlet, because with an alien, you don't have to keep it to that earthly confines. Even werewolves and things have to have some real human rules that they follow. Not with aliens. Aliens can be anything, can do anything. So yeah, you might have to sign a consent form for each tentacle. You might have to negotiate what goes where. I mean, I had a joke with the tentacle monster story, 3 holes, no waiting. It had to be negotiated. So giving us more freedom, but we have to act on it responsibly too.
Have you ever heard of the article? It's a review article called Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex.
Yes!
It's famous
fascinating. For those who haven't heard of it, it's basically someone talking about how if Superman were to make love to Lois Lane, she would be damaged by his sperm as it went through her. So
if they actually wanted to have a child, it would be quite an
feat.
involved process in order to do it safely.
You remember
there would be some judicious applications of kryptonite in exactly the right doses in order to create the right atmosphere.
Do you guys remember the movie Hancock with Will Smith?
No. Oh yes, that was I do remember that. One of the
cut scenes was when he was actually having sex with this woman in a trailer, and he goes, oh no, here it comes. And then you hear her scream, ah! And then you hear her thump against the ceiling, and this big splooge of white goes all over the place. They should have left that in the movie. But when you talk about Man of Steel, Women of Tissue, that's what immediately goes through my head. Come on, he's an alien. I never liked Superman anyway. You see the cartoon when Lois is like, he's standing before her naked, and they're like tentacles and claws and everything. That's the pictures for. He's like, to hold on to you. And it was like the caption was when Lois realizes that Superman actually is an alien.
Yeah.
So another topic that I've heard has kind of shifted in recent years is a change in attitudes toward BBW women and women of size, that has started showing up as a theme or a subgenre? How does that all work?
I think that has been going on all along in science fiction, romance, erotica, because the women who read these things probably don't want to think that they have no chance with an alien, okay? So they're seeing in the book someone who looks like them be swept away in a spaceship. And I think that's why there's this BBW theme.
Yeah. I mean, it's representation.
Mm-hmm.
You know that fiction has been dominated with women who have the perfect figures or the bodybuilder type for the fantasy things. And we would like to see I say we because my butt's bony. I'm still kind of a size 2. So I don't actually get into that trope. I've gotten yelled at and shouted. I mean, there needs to be some skinny women fiction, but it's usually the curvy, shapely women who get all these fantastical things happen to them. And one of the reasons I started writing in the first place is because I didn't see me as a woman of color in any of the stories I wanted to read. Representation is important. It wasn't there, so I wrote it so it would be there. And everybody needs to have that feeling that, you know, I can read in my favorite genre or watch my favorite genre and any type of entertainment, and I can see myself in that. Let's face it, the average size in this country is a 9 to a 10. 9 to 12, I do believe it is. And
I think it's actually more like 14.
I think it's 14.
14, okay? So average size
go for 16 or 18.
These are the people who want to, this is the majority of the women. Why should we pigeonhole everybody into feeling that only somebody who looks a certain way or is shaped a certain way can go on these fantastical adventures themselves? I love my BBWs. I mean, half my family's BBW. They look at me like where did I come? I'm the alien in this group. I have no idea where it came from. But it's all about that representation. And these are the women who do a lot of reading as well. And I'm not going to shell my money out over time and time again if I'm not going to be able to find myself relating to the main characters there. So, I mean.
Somebody just said something in chat too about age as well. I know we do a lot of what we call second chance romance, which is women who are not barely legal.
Yeah.
And guys too. I mean, personally, I'm 60. I don't find 18-year-olds attractive. I changed his father's diapers.
Oh, yeah, you know, that does remind me that Changeling has a whole series of Motorcycle Club books, and most of the guys in those are older than 30 at least.
Most of them are older than 50.
Oh my God. I love a daddy. I'm sorry. Spank me, daddy. I actually had some guy who was in his 30s flirt with me, and I wanted to pat him on the head and say, little boy, you wet behind the ears, your breath smells like Similac, go home to your mama. What I feel is attractive has shifted and changed too. So I don't want cream of some young guy sitting over there. No, I want a daddy.
We get some cover art requests in that I look at and go, oh no.
You see the images of the star of Evil Dead. What's his name?
Fudge! Oh my goodness.
Bruce Campbell.
Thank you.
Some pictures went around on Twitter of Bruce Campbell's what he called a quarantine beard, and all the women in my TL were like, oh my God, give me this man right now.
Him? Sam Elliott? Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
That silver hair and looking.
Some things improve with age.
I like Steve Martin. I've always thought Steve Martin was really cute, particularly because he's been silver-haired for most of his life.
Yeah, I mean, he went gray when he was like 22.
And I hate to say this, but Sean Connery, the older that man got, the better that man looks.
Oh yeah.
Accent on top of that.
And I think we need to see some more. We already have some, but I think we need to see more heroines, more women in our romances and on movies and stuff who are considered just as desirable as they approach those years as the men do. And I think that if we think hard, we can find a few of them. And again, I'm terrible with names. It's a drag getting old. But there's been a few, but I think we could do with more, especially as the population gets older.
Yeah. They say men age like wine and women just get old. No,
I've heard that.
Yeah, well, that's been like the way the culture has been, and I think we need to change that, and I think we can change that. Yep, that's the picture. That's the picture. Oh yeah.
That is nice.
That has definitely upped the estrogen count in this country by a couple of percentage points since it came out.
I had to look since you brought it up.
How about Stephanie especially, but how has the interracial subgenre changed recently? When I started writing, interracial only referred to a black woman with a white man. Yeah. And when I wrote a story with a Native American woman with a white man, it was like, what is this? How do we categorize this? And,
ignoring all the years of what they call the savage romances, in the 80s, oh man, everything was an Indian romance. There's a few authors who got it wrong that I will never read again. I mean, Cassie Edwards was one. She did a crack at actual black and Native American and white thing, and she never heard of a Punnett Square because she had a woman who was straight out of Africa being raped by, it was a historical, but by the plantation owner who gave away like 10 of her children and kept one daughter, the daughter who was as pale as he was. Okay, this woman was described as being as black as tar. No, that doesn't work like that. No. And then she ran off because her brother wanted to sleep with her. She ran off to a reservation where she found her noble savage, and they wound up getting together. Some bull happened, and they had a baby that had blonde hair and blue eyes. The scientist was screaming, no, no, no. In addition to that, she had
genetics was mandatory in science.
There was no research in this, because even then, at the end, the husband who had been raping the slave in order to get children to sell kicked his wife out because he really loved this slave. And then they got together, and she was like in the front of the buckboard. I took that book, I hurled it across the room, and it exploded into a million pieces. I took them out and burned them in effigies. No. But since then, people tend to forget those Indian romances were all interracial. Then we had, I forget the author, but one of the first interracial romances I read was called The Color of Love. It was a contemporary, and it was a realistic look at some of the issues that they were facing back in the 90s being an interracial couple. I mean, I got sick and tired. My husband's white. I got sick and tired of people singing Jungle Fever to me. Oh my goodness. But ever since then, in a very short period of time, I remember some of the books that I wrote when I first started writing had to deal with Asian characters and other people of color. At a convention, one woman stood up and thanked me for that. She's like, I'm from Japan. You wrote a Japanese character. We know how to have sex too. There's a million of us. Trust me, there's a lot of us on that island. Thank you for that. So from that point when it was shocking, it is now more commonplace to see. So you can have just about every combination of race and culture, so long as the author does their research. I mean, get a sensitivity reader, ask some questions if you don't know. They're big sellers. And those little foibles, those little details you put in, like at one character, they went to, I remember Irene was laughing at me. She's like, I never considered this before. She was black, he was white. They went to have their first kiss and couldn't get around that nose. So they had to figure out how to kiss around that. That was the first time I kissed Dennis. I didn't know how to do it. I was like, how do you, okay, that's a ski slope. How do you get around it? So ever since then, since people are more accepting, I won't use people, so society has changed on a whole. So people, once again, are demanding representation. Look at Cheerios. A few years ago when they had an interracial couple and everybody was writing them hate mail, And then they did it again with the gay couple and got even more hate mail because I thought they thought that was really funny. I think it got them a lot of publicity. But now you turn on the TV and you'll see interracial couples all over the place. And they're no longer just black and white. You see Asian people with Latinos, and you will find Samoans with some black people or some Africans. I mean, it's a good mix because it's now starting to reflect what the world actually looks like. I mean, I hate to say it, but white people, you white guys, I mean, y'all not going to be the majority for too much longer. Everybody's going to, you know, in this country, there's going to be a lot of more racial mixing because let's face it, number one, you should be with whoever is attractive to you. What they look like, what they sound like, their race and their culture shouldn't be an issue. It should be that person moves something for you. And a lot more people are starting to feel this way. And for the first time, there is a lag in the census that says, I think in the next 15, 20 years, white people will no longer be the majority. I think it'll be Latinx. So, I mean, the world is changing. The face of the world is changing. The internet and things like that has made the world even shorter because internet dating, oh my goodness, people are mixing and mingling all over the place.
You look back at Shakespeare's, in the Shakespeare plays, it's fairly normal to have people of different nationalities.
Because it wasn't until the 1800s when race became an issue. If you look through your history, it was, what can you do for me? I remember there was a Doctor Who episode when he had, I forget, Mac, I think her name is the black female companion with the big afro. Oh, I loved her. Bill, thank you, sweetie. I remember one of the first trips they did, they went back in the past. Am I going to be okay? And he's like, just walk around, you know, like you're doing. She's like, no, I'm black. And he's like, you know, England was a lot blacker than you think it was. They just whitewashed it. And she goes, Jesus Christ. And he says, they whitewashed him too. I fell out of my chair laughing because that is true. At that point, there was, if you have the money to be there, what skills do you have and what can you add? Race didn't become an issue until, you know, people started invading and looking for a reason to invade and take over and oppress somebody else. So, I mean, at one point, it's the same way with homosexuality. That wasn't an issue until secession became an issue. Because if you wanted to sleep with the dude, okay, you wanted to sleep with the guy. If peasants were doing it, nobody really cared. You had no property to pass on to anybody. It wasn't a big deal back then. So long as you know, popped out a kid or two, what you did in your spare time is nothing. It was more Romanesque. You know, in Roman times, everybody was considered bisexual. If you were just any port in the storm, I should say. So, I mean, history has altered. We went to this big negative snap when you have to be a certain way with the people in power demand it, and now that's easing up again. So, yeah, thank you, Jennifer. James the First was hella gay. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of gay.
All right. I think we've covered that topic. We've got a few questions that came in from the chat. I would also like to cover a couple more things before we get to that. Have you seen? Now I know this can be very difficult information to get sometimes, but have you seen a change in the demographics of people who are buying erotic romance? I know that when I first got into it 10, 15 years ago. The publisher that I was working at the time says, look, if you're not writing for a female audience, forget it, you're not going to sell any books. Our readers, they're all women and they're all interested in this particular kind of story. And from my opinion, my perspective, I think it has changed somewhat, but I'm curious to hear what how the demographics are nowadays.
It is still less common in the U.S. for us to hit the male market. Our U.S. volume is still primarily female. Worldwide, it's much closer to 50-50. I think that's because the U.S. has had an anti-romance male thing going on in the past. The spread changes with the age change, if that makes any sense. So
you're saying younger men, you might be a little better market there. how have you been changing the way you make covers for your books? Because I know that when I first started,
the most annoying change has been Facebook censorship. We had a cover that Facebook rejected because of cleavage, and the only thing
Amazon or Facebook?
Pardon?
Amazon or Facebook?
Oh, Facebook.
Facebook.
Okay. is the biggest marketing venue we've got, and they rejected this cover for cleavage because the frog wasn't wearing anything.
Okay.
But yeah, that other than issues like that, we've got a lot more diversity, I think, in covers, both in subject matter and in models. And you didn't used to. I remember when I worked for another publisher back when Flash and I first met, you didn't do any male-male, and you definitely weren't going to do a male-male couple on cover, even if it was a three-way.
Yeah.
You could have multiple partners, but you weren't going to put a male-male couple on the cover. And we see a lot more beards, we see a lot more tattoos, we see a lot more furry critters. The
eyes. People like to do covers with the different color eyes to just move that intensity and, jewel tones and things like that. Anything that would make it stand out. Black and white covers have been making a comeback. And oddly enough, I've run into quite a few people who do BDSM who don't have people on their covers at all. They have objects because that's a way of getting around Amazon.
Yeah, the 50 Shades covers just usually don't have any people on them at all. And that set off a whole trend in BDSM covers. It's like a black background with a white thing and maybe a red thing. And
honestly,
that was like
BDSM does not do all that well for us. And whereas as the shifters and the impreg and werewolves, and of course the MC romance, so all do much better. Of course, then again, it depends on who writes it. If Flash wants to do BDSM, that's another story.
Yeah, I get requests for more of that tentacle monster when all humans were slaves. Yeah, that first tentacle monster.
That's interesting.
There's a lot more demand for cover. It used to be that you wanted a cover that you could hide at one point, so you couldn't tell it was a romance novel because it was really a shameful thing to read a romance novel.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
They look at you down, they look at you funny. Now people want that ultra sexy, sensuous cover up there, and they don't really care who looks and sees. And I think a lot of that has to do with small press, and you can read on your phone or your,
ebooks, right?
But even for the covers now, people will go around, look at this guy. This is the guy that I want. I want this tattoo. I actually had the cover for the Sleeping Dragon. Somebody actually got a tattoo of that mark on their back.
My.
So I was like, thank you. Picture. And I wish I thought of that. So I mean,
So we've got a few questions from the Q&As from the viewers here. I think we've already covered the trends question. One of our Jennifer says, do you think that Me Too and similar will result in long-term move away from gray consent, dubious consent, bodice rippers, and the like, or will it eventually cycle back?
Those trends are driven by reader demands. So if readers are buying it, it'll keep selling. If it doesn't sell, publishers aren't going to produce it. The only place we see a lot of the male-dominated super alpha stuff anymore is in the MC romances. And even there, if your guy isn't asking for consent, it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's not going to be happening.
I think things will cycle around again, but it'll be a difference in this cycle. That consent issue, I think from here on out, will be addressed in not just romance and erotica. I think in just about all literature, it's going to be addressed because it's too big and people feel too much for it. I mean, you look around you, half the women in my family have been raped or sexually assaulted. The first time I got sexually assaulted, I was 8 years old and didn't understand what was going on. People are now coming out about that. They make it impossible for these abusers to hide. So I do think that even if we do cycle around back again to that bodice ripper type and that forced thing, it's going to be a different type of thing. We're going to do it with the aliens and things. And I do believe that, honestly, I do believe that the age of, you know, the only way that heroine can have sex is to be raped is completely dead and buried. I don't think that one's ever coming back.
Issue of liability there too that we give some serious thought to. If we allow certain behaviors to be expressed as if they're normal, then we have some culpability there.
Yeah, we cannot normalize bad behavior. That's why I used to hate it when people said boys will be boys. No, I told my daughter, somebody touches you, you have that right to knock him on his butt and then kick him in the neck and then run away screaming. No, there's no such thing as boys will be boys. Society has to change that view. What you're doing is you're training guys that it's okay to pull and tug and hurt women to get their attention. Doesn't work like that. So I don't think it's ever going to get back, but that's a big issue. We need, you know, society, I can say we need to change society more, but it is changing. I've seen guys
We change it in some ways.
Yeah. Say again?
We set trends.
Yeah.
As writers and as we also as editors and publishers, what we accept. I mean, if you write it, but your publisher or your editor, either one says, yeah, no, this has got to be changed.
Then you change it.
Yeah.
And it starts with us. I mean, with you guys as publishers, me as a writer, we all have to have some responsibility in that because we can no longer normalize this stupidity. Otherwise, it just lingers. And then the next generation will be dealing with it, and the generation after that, and my great-great-grandchildren will be having the same conversation that we're having now, talking about how things are coming, change is going to come, but we don't need that change to be that slow. So we need to, you know, everybody needs to step up and take responsibility for their little circle of the world that they influence. So you will never see anybody get, you'll never see a protagonist of mine engage in any type of that behavior, because if it was me, frankly, I'd try to kill them.
Consent is, the issues with consent that we've talked about are often pretty clear, but sometimes it can get a little murky, like if there's an age gap or a power gap or an economic gap between the two partners, the consent of the person in the weaker position can appear to be enthusiastic, but the power gap sometimes has some questions. So is that something that you've seen come up in stories? It's something that in the fandom community can often, you get people who protest about a story like on AO3 or something like that, where there's a significant power gap or age gap that, that even though the consent looks to be enthusiastic, maybe it's, if not coerced, at least influenced. And so you get some people who kind of get up in arms in that. Do you have any thoughts on that kind of power differential?
I hate it. It should
When,
oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. When I read something like that, I get this weird icky feeling, you know, and when I was reading those bodice rippers back in the 1970s, I didn't. So it's changing, you know? I don't know, that's my experience.
Our expectations of our characters as we're editing has changed, I think. It's gotten to be too normal for us to look for the consent to assure that it's there. And I don't have to as often anymore send things back and say, I don't feel like there's enough consent here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that as often. Do you?
No.
I get, occasionally, I will get a manuscript that is basically porn with, you know, a few scenes of romance. And those, we just don't accept those.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not good writing.
No. In my mind, whenever that power differential comes up, I think about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. And I think I want to slap every person that says, oh, they were so romantic. No, there was nothing romantic about that. She couldn't say no. So that's in the back of my mind whenever I have that type of power. I take a military consent, kind of military issue on that. You don't deal anybody that's underneath you. They have to be your rank or higher. So if that comes up across that there is something like that, then yes, it will have to be made clear that these two aren't in it. He's not using his power to influence her to have what he wants. It has to be something, I mean, to the point where I'm fine with him firing her getting mad and trying to run him over with her car, and then him coming back and explaining why. And I'm not just didn't fire you, I set you up with another company over here. Now you're not underneath my power structure. Can we work this out? Because like it's that icky feeling. Oh my goodness, that's a creepy feeling that lingers.
Yeah.
With anything with a large age difference too, I'm seeing more of the characters coming in where the guy is saying, no, we can't do this, I'm too old for you, and her having to seduce him.
Yeah.
So, and
not too long ago, before the RWA blew up, there was controversy about one author who tried to say that this story was romantic. It was a 17-year-old gymnast and her 32-year-old coach.
Oh my God.
And then he told her, nobody, after she started sleeping with her, he was like, nobody's going to believe you anyway. So if you try to tell anybody, I'll just say that you're lying. And therefore you're going to keep sleeping with me. And they tried to say that this was a romance. And the hue and cry and that, oh, it was horrible. And I mean, it was something that shocked me that somebody could actually get away with this, because
that got published?
Yeah, it was published. And
that was a big mistake.
That's the kind of thing that makes me want to forward it off to some government agency.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. And she's like, it sounds like the Olympic team doctor we just had. I'm like, are you trying to rip stories from the headlines and make them a romantic? Because no, that doesn't work. You are a rapist. That's what that is.
Okay, well, we are coming up to the end of our hour. I would like to give each of you a chance to leave our audience with your links and your recommendations. I'll start off. I am Nobilis Reed. My podcast is Nobilis Erotica at nobilis.libsyn.com. We are a paying market. There are links on the website. If you write erotic short stories in a science fiction or fantasy vein, we are a paying market, and the instructions for submission are on the page. We are always buying stories. Stephanie, can you give us the next bit?
Yeah. As you know, I'm Stephanie Burke. You can find me at authorstephanieburke.online. Just updated my website. Woohoo! I'm also.
What's your latest title?
My latest title, How Not to Date a Tentacle Monster, available at Changeling Press. So please go buy it if you want to, have some serious consent, some tentacle monsters, and some really interesting sexual situations. Dude has 20 penises. I'm just saying. He made it work. He made it work.
All right. Jean, how about you? What you got?
I'm an editor at Changeling Press, and we are always looking for good writers. What is that address? Changeling Press at changelingpress.com.
Changelingpress.com, in the submissions address is under help. I'll go ahead and post the whole submissions link on the chat.
And Margaret, do you have anything to add, given that both Stephanie and Jean pointed out Changeling Press?
I have enjoyed working with these two ladies for a very long time, and it is a true pleasure, ladies. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We are done. Thank you all for coming and listening to us blather on. Maybe there's some good nuggets of information in there. We're going to end our presentation now. If you want to chat any more about this, I'll be slipping over to the Discord. Personally, I'm going to the new media party in the new media chat rooms. But ladies, if you're going to be in any of the Discord chats, where are you going to be?
I'm going to be in the literary one.
I think I'm going to dip into the literary one myself to see if I can figure out how to get there.
Okay.
It was an interesting conversation, and the chat had some really fun conversations going in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much.
All right. So Tech, you can take us out now.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night.